Okay, welcome to another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dashi Miller here. Let's make sure everything's working right. We got a whole new system set up here at the Academy. So anyway, looks good. Okay, so during this episode, we're going to be taking a look at emotional influence in self-defense. Okay, people tend to lean in like one direction when it comes to this kind of thing, right? But look at what I call, right, the missing link in reality-based training. Whether we're talking about martial arts, self-defense, hopefully we're doing martial arts for self-defense, but we know that people can be, training in it for whatever reasons, right? Okay, so again, we'll kind of move around. Got some basic things for you to kind of take a look at today, but a problem that I see and that I didn't really recognize when I first started. I started in 1975, right? So I was in what was then called junior high school, and now they call it middle school, right? Like people like being in the middle. Anyway, so I really didn't know. Not only did I not know anything about what I was getting involved in other than what I might have seen in movies, because there are all kinds of like karate movies in the 70s and things like that. But at that age, right, I was mid-teens, whatever, I didn't know the right questions to ask. And now after teaching for how many years? Do the math. I started teaching in 1981, 2, something like that. Running into adult students, I still have the same, I've made the same observation, right? People very often, and it's not that they like are they are trying to be ignorant and that they're stupid or whatever. I mean, they don't know any better, right? They don't know what questions to ask. They don't know what they don't know. Okay, that kind of thing. And once we start coupling this with people trying to translate something from a foreign culture, right, Japan, based on the way they look at things in England or Australia or the US or whatever, right? And then couple that with going back a couple of centuries to where modern Japanese don't even know what or how to translate properly the stuff from those old days. It's kind of like us, if you've ever in school, right, tried to read Shakespeare. I mean, it's English, but it's almost indecipherable, right? Because nobody speaks that way anymore, right? So we run into the same kind of problems. Anyway, but martial arts and self-defense training in today's world tends to focus on the what and how of technical moves and not so much on the why, right? And it's not that it's not there, but, right? But the why you might do any given move, technique, or skill in any given situation, right? And so, again, it's not that there isn't a why, because teachers will often pass on a why, or senior students will help somebody else or whatever. But this side of things is usually left to the student's preferences and or intuitive feeling about what they can and can't do in any given situation, right? But there's something missing in this approach, okay? And of course, that's the point of today's lesson, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the role of emotions in both defensive response and in training. Just trying to keep up with my notes here because I didn't have a chance to print things out. So, but what we're going to take a look at is how they actually affect the body's ability to move from a base physiological kind of standpoint, right? So here's a little example. I encountered this. I've watched lots of people encounter this typically in sport or competitive martial arts, where you're getting out there and you're sparring and mixing it up and things like that. And it's not that we don't, but you get out there and you work things, right? And so what you have is a student that might be that they're outgunned rank wise, or they just came in as a timid person, or maybe they came in because or if they were a kid, their parents signed them up to increase level of confidence or whatever. And what you have is, everybody bows in and then you do your thing and you're moving around, right? And the student, right, is trying to stay away from their sparring partner. Right, they're keeping the distance. They're gauging things, and they're really just doing everything they can to not get punched or not get kicked or not get grabbed or thrown or whatever, right? And then they get the teacher or the coach or whatever from the sideline yelling, get in there, get him, right? Except they're not feeling get them. They're feeling screw that, stay away, right? So it's a very different kind of setup, right? But I get it. You get it, right? The ideal is we're going to be confident. We're going to be committed. We're going to go for it, right? Handle the threat, take care of shit, right? But what about when you're feeling, right? Actually, you know what? Before I even get to the feelings here, I wrote this up here in a very specific way, right? Because the title of the training today is emotional influence, right? On martial arts and self-defense training, right? But here's a way that we used to write this way back in the day, right? And I think we picked it up because one of my training peers way back in the day, and we're talking like 1980, 81. I don't know where you were then, but they were this brainiac, right, in school. I can't remember if I think they were a scientist, and they pulled something from physics, right? So everybody knows E equals mc squared, right? It's this theory of relativity all summed up in a really basic kind of way. But instead of writing emotion, right, sans hyphen, right, you wrote it this way, right? What does the E stand for in E equals mc squared? What is it? Okay, E is energy. Okay, it's energy, right? So, and I'm doing a very, very kind of truncated thing today because I developed an entire program a bunch of years ago called EDR, Emotion-Based Defensive Response, and it's based on all the stuff that I was taught Japanese-wise, based on the Godai and the 5 elements and those kind of influences. But what I did was I did the Japanese. Okay, funny story. A lot of the books that I've written strip out that stuff because I made them applicable to the general self-defense survival community. And regularly I get emails from people that really like the book, or a given book, right? And then they pose a question, right? Have you thought about writing this for the Ninjutsu community? Have you thought about rewriting this for the Bujinkan community? And I'm like, it was written for them. Then they'll go, well, you know what I mean, with the Japanese terminology. And okay, and I chuckle at this a lot because often people will filter shit out because the right words aren't being used or whatever. So sometimes I throw them in, sometimes I don't. But truth should be truth regardless of what package it's wrapped in. But often people will not play that game. Anyway, so emotions, right? We can do physical things. We can think, right, in very logical ways and whatnot, right? But emotions should be seen like the fuel that's in a vehicle, right? You put the wrong fuel in, right? Or the right fuel in the wrong vehicle or whatever, and you're not going very far, very fast, right? So what we were looking at with this emotion is emotions are energy in motion, right? How does that look? How does that affect your body? How does that affect how you think? We all know, right? If you're having a shitty day and you're all pissed off and whatnot, and you go into another setting with some other people, if you're not mindful, you can drag that shit into that new environment and completely up the experience you're having with these folks, right? Family, whatever, because somebody pissed you off at 10 o'clock yesterday morning, right? You're still dragging that anchor behind you. So we want to be careful with things, but this is where we're going. And we get it, right? Because this is an emotion too. This is a feel, right? Get in there and get it. And we'll get to that one. But what I really want to focus on is the not so ideal, right? I'm not feeling this whole, conquest, domination, whatever, right? So what about when we're feeling, not that it's really a feeling, right? Unthreatened. Got nothing, dude. Okay, the person standing in front of you, they might be threatening you, they might be pointing, they might be insinuating or whatever, but that person is just not doing it for you. Okay, they're not invoking anything. Okay, but it's not just unthreatened. What about feeling in charge? If that's actually a feeling, right? You just confident, whatever, or you might be otherwise restricted by rules. I'm thinking about the old days in a different life for me when I was a police officer or I was in a security setting or whatever, and somebody's just jacking their jaw in front of me or making threats or whatever. Okay, the way this is going to work is okay. So what about times like that? What about even in this one? What about just being flat out freaking exhausted? Right? I'm just not, dude, today's not a good day. Okay. I'm just, okay, I don't feel like it. Okay. What about when we're feeling anxious, right? Overwhelmed, right? Like that student I talked about that's tossed out there in a sparring kind of thing, right? And they're just trying to stay away from this other person. They're doing everything they can to not get hit, kicked, grabbed, whatever, right? They're just, they feel like they're in over their head, okay? I know, right? I know. We want to train and we want to fantasize or believe that no matter what the threat is, right? We're going to hit a point where no matter what the threat is, no matter who it is, how many of them there are, whatever, I'm just not going to be shaken, man. I'm going to take the fight to them. But that's just not the way it works. Not from my experience anyway, right? So there are certain things that I've developed over time that are kind of a litmus test, okay? So I will insert myself into a dangerous situation. Let's say I'm walking along and I see somebody get pounded on and, right, assess things and I realize they really are the victim. They didn't start something and then whatever, okay? So what's when I'm going to act, okay? So my litmus test is 3 people or less, right? No more than 3, okay? 1 or 2 is okay, right? No more than 3. They're unarmed. No weapons are involved. And I can insert myself safely, right? And based on what they're doing, size and whatnot, okay, I think that falls within my skill set, right? Weapons, 3 or more as far as like a large size people or whatever, or it's just, I mean, the amount of rage that's going on, whatever, okay? Nope, I'm going to find myself a good vantage point where I can watch, and the way I'm going to help is I'm going to be a good witness. Okay, I'm going to be good at testifying or whatever because I'm going to record what's going on, right? As a warrior, I can still help protect. Maybe I can't protect that person, but I can protect the community at large by helping to get this person or these people off the streets. Okay, not a cop anymore, but right. So, but anxious and overwhelmed, that's a whole different feeling, right? Your brain is telling you what your teacher told you, right? You got to get in there, take the fight to them. Meanwhile, your body's like, screw this, dude. Okay, I don't want to be there. Okay, what about when you're feeling right afraid? That's a whole different kind of thing, right? Where your body's like vibrating and shaking. You might not be going anywhere, or you do, right? So you're motivated to not let them get you first, right? This could be an escape mode. This could be where you don't even wait for information. You just freaking take off, right? Or you hit them first, but it's not the same as confident, committed. Let's see what's going to happen. It's not that same thing, right? So, but what about when you've got that kind of thing going on, right? What about when you feel evasive, right? And you're wanting to avoid confrontation. Hey, whoa, I don't have any trouble. That kind of thing, right? What about those things? So we get it, right? We have these techniques and we have these models. The problem is that people tend to want to learn this stuff based on the step-by-step description on the Densho, right? Remember, the Densho is a listing of techniques, right? Right? It's like crib notes, right? It's like what's that stuff called? Cliff notes, right? I mentioned Shakespeare before, right? So if you were doing Macbeth or King Lear or whatever in school, and you know, you didn't feel like reading things, right? You could go to the local bookstore and grab the Cliff Notes on King Lear or on Macbeth or whatever you're doing, right? And all the key points are there, right? So you didn't have to read it. But here are the key points, but there's nuances in the story, right? There are these dynamics that are going on and whatnot, as opposed to just this left brain. Here are the key points. So chances are this is what's going to be asked about on the test, and then you can just, right, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, just jot in the answer. Okay. So the techniques, again, Hatsumi Sensei has always pointed out that the techniques are not the lessons in and of themselves, right? You have to learn them so that you can then extract the lessons, right? They're only an indication of where you need to begin. And that's where we're going to really kind of dive into things today. I'm going to kind of keep this one, you know, a little bit shorter. But so here's the question, right? How would any given technique, Seon, Tangeki, Kyogi, Koku, Danshi, Danshu, whatever, right? How would any given technique look under the influence of any one of these conditions? Okay. Now, I was going to go into physiology and stuff like that today. Don't have a whole lot of room, but each of these emotions, when we're under the influence of any one of them, not all of them, right? Any one of them, certain muscles are firing, right? Certain things are going on, right? When you're in this anxious, overwhelmed kind of thing, that's where you get that sick in the gut kind of feeling. You get, people often call it butterflies, whatever, right? But what's happening is the abdominal muscles are tight. They're really, really tight, right? There's a sick, hollow feeling in the pit of your stomach. It's trying to pull the rib cage down to cover the and things like that, right? To protect you, right? It's almost like a crayfish, right? Getting the tail ready to spring backwards, right? Your lumbar flattens out, your hips roll under, your knees are flexed, right? It's very, very different. And front back movement under those physiological stressors to the skeleton, to the spine, make it really, really difficult to move forward and back easily. Okay. Even if you're, you know, at this angled kind of thing, what is very, very easy, and you find these things when you explore them, is that side motion is very easy, right? Because the stress is here. It's not to the sides, right? So moving side, which is why when we do this profiled stuff, right, people often say that I'm moving back or I'm moving forward. No. You're moving away from him or you're moving toward him. Okay. My body itself is moving side. Okay. Relatively speaking, I'm not moving in the direction that my sternum is pointing or my spine is pointing. I'm moving lateral to that, right? It's very different, right? And all these things have different stressors, right? This afraid thing is often the same as aggression, but there's this, the breathing changes, all kinds of things, right? It's short, it's choppy, right? That kind of thing, right? And you're moving more from your solar plexus, right? You might be moving back or you might be moving forward, but your body is buzzing, right? It's a very, very different feel, okay? But again, you have to explore it to get it. Otherwise, everything is just kind of step-by-step mechanics. And again, we're back to preference. Well, what I do is, right, whenever somebody tells me that what they do is, I ask them against what kind of an attacker, in what kind of situations, under what kind of stressors, right? Any kind of rules or concerns that you have going into that thing, that's going to affect things. You know, are you fresh, you know, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, you're ready to go? Or did you just you just came from a freaking hellacious workout at the gym, or a major argument, or you're you know, it's right now as I'm shooting this, it's mid-January on the East Coast in the United States. So we just had one snowstorm, and we got another one coming in here on Friday. So it's colder than hell. I mean, it's like teens, maybe bumped into 20 Fahrenheit, right? So it's cold. Your muscles are contracted, right? Just been shoveling snow, or you've been working all freaking day in this kind of thing, and you're just exhausted. And here comes Joe Jackwagon, whatever, right? So each of these things are they're a very different place to be. Okay. So, oh, I lost my screen. So what we're going to be taking a look at during this week's Friday virtual training is taking a look at things from these different perspectives, right? Same technique, different feel, right? So let's take a look at this thing. Two sides to training. Right? I know I don't have things in order today, right? There's two sides to training as they show up in these different lineages that we have, right? One way to describe this, right? Sometimes it's called the dragon and the tiger realm, right? So dragon, sometimes, okay, so dragon and tiger, they would go together as opposites, right? Sometimes, right? Sometimes it's called right and left side. Okay, Sa and Yu. Okay, this shows up in our Kotoryu tradition, right? It's one of the 9 schools that Hatsumi Sensei got had Soke shipped from, and now things have kind of been split out and all that, right? But it shows up in the Kotoryu in the Kudai Dori section, right? Catching the right time, catching space. It's not easy to pin down, but anyway, and that's where the kamae are listed, right? And so what you see, and we'll talk about one of these kamae as they show up this way, but what are we really looking at? Okay, because it's really difficult to pin some of this stuff down. Like the Kotoryu wasn't called the Kotoryu until, I don't know, somewhere in the 1500s, but it's a couple of hundred years older than that, right? The material that's in it, right? So very, very different. But often when these schools were named, and lots of Japanese martial schools were named with the same kind of idea, they're named based on a gokui, right? A secret or an essential nature of what's going on in that lineage. Okay. So, but it's not always as obvious as it looks, right? Koppojutsu, using my skeleton to attack his skeleton. And really, because in the Kotoryu scrolls, there's also a section on Koshijutsu, but I thought that belonged to the Gyoko school. I don't see. Okay. So there's this left right, but it's kind of the way things get defined, right? So if we look at Kotoryu the way most people look at it today, right? Koto of Kotoryu, Ryu means lineage, right? Okay, so lineage or school, right? Not really school, lineage. Okay, so Koto in this case means like tiger knocked down, or as we would say in English, right? Knocking down the tiger. Knocking down, right, the tiger. Okay, what the hell does that mean, right? Well, I just covered this last night during a virtual class that we had for our seniors and whatnot that was in here. And one of the questions I posed was, how do you knock down a tiger, right? How do you deal with this thing that weighs several hundred pounds, right? Several hundred pounds, right? It's all freaking muscular, fangs, just ripping, tearing teeth and whatnot, claws. It's going to maul you because it jumps and gets its weight coming in, and then its claws and paws are designed to pull you in, and then it can go to town in here, right? So how the hell do you do that? Well, I shared a story about some of the training I used to do when I was in the military and law enforcement and working with dogs, because one of the threats that we had was going to deal with somebody or just going to deal with any kind of incident, and there's a freaking ferocious dog and whatever, right? So how do you do that, right? And the answer is that the weakest point, you need to understand the crux. You need to understand sometimes it's called kaname, right? It's the crux. It's the part of the technique that is both the strength, but if you break that, if you remove it, if you destroy it, everything else falls apart. Okay. So a good example of a kaname is the bolt in a hinge. Okay. Like the hinge on your door, right? Okay. Unless you've got weird kind of things that hold the door top and bottom and they're hidden and recessed and all that. But most people understand, right? You get this one plate that goes on the door frame, you get one plate that goes on the door, and then you get these loops that kind of go together like a gear and form a channel, and then you got this bolt that goes down through, right? Well, that bolt is the kaname, it's the crux. It's the strength of the whole unit, okay? So if that bolt is removed or it's cut, the whole damn unit falls apart, right? So with that tiger, right, there's this strength. Everything is built on getting something right here to deal with it, right? But on a tiger or a dog or whatever, this is also one of the weakest points, okay? So if I can slip into that weak point and attack it, right, here, because everything else is freaking muscular, everything else, right, is just very, very difficult. But what this is pointing to is the ability to know where the weakness is and go directly there. Okay, go directly there. Right? You don't screw with anything else. You're avoiding things until that thing opens, or you can create an opening and you go right to that thing. This is not trading shots. This is not punching him in the head and him punching me in the head. And we're going to see which one can hold out the longest until we get a knockout. No, screw that. Okay. I identify weaknesses. Okay. And whichever one opens up or that I can open up, I'm going straight to that. This is not about trading blows. This is not high school fighting. This is not Vegas boxing match that everybody goes to see a good fight, right? This is survival. This is kokuto jutsu, right? Kokuto is fighting, brawling, scuffling, that kind of thing. It's the raw nature of things, right? If I need to bite this motherfucker, I'm going to bite him. Okay. This is not the same as Budo or Bujutsu. Is there crossover? Yeah. But Ninjutsu, it's not the same. Okay. It's not the same. It's about survival. Anyway, right. So with this knocking down the tiger, this is where most people bump into this. Okay. But there's a secret, there's a hidden nature to all this stuff. Of course there is, right? Because Kotoryu is another brand of Ninjutsu, right? And again, people like to go based on conventional. It was a samurai school. It was okay. You need to dig back farther, right? So a hidden translation for Kotoryu is Kotoryu. Koto. Tomit. Ko. Tiger. And Ryu. Dragon. Okay. Tiger and dragon. This was an old way of pointing to the same thing as the yin yang, right? Complementing opposites. Okay. Two different realms to operate. And if you understand how the yin yang came to be and what it's pointing to, based on the way the kanji is written, not the way the symbol is drawn. The way the kanji are written, what you're looking at is this one is the side of a mountain that gets more sun, and the other is the side of the mountain that doesn't get as much sun. So you have different mountain, different aspects, different mountain, different things. So when we come back down here to these two sides, right? What we have, and it doesn't matter if we're using the dragon or we're using this Sa-yu. There we go. Okay, sorry. Anyway, so or we're using this Sa-yu, which is an old way of saying left and right. And that's another thing that people confuse. When they look at the Kudai Dori and they're looking at the kanji, right? It says left and right. Most people translate it as left side forward or right side forward. But it's not that. It goes back to what's being pointed to with this yin yang kind of thing, right? So this could be like the hard aspects of things, or going at him hard, fast, that kind of thing, or being more soft, right? And more controlling, that kind of thing, right? But there's something else hidden in here, okay? So what else is hidden in here is this idea of the ideal in which case I am in a superior position. I have control of this situation. Okay. So if you have or have seen or have access to or can get access to one of the first, if not the first, maybe it was the first, of the Quest videos that was put out when I was much younger. Okay. Hatsumi Sensei goes through the Kudai Dori and goes through the Kamae. And I'll give a little illustration here of Seigan, which is the first one that's listed. But it says right Seigan no Kamae, left Seigan no Kamae, right? So again, right? But it's not that, right? There is a way to take up the Kamae when everything is good, right? Everything is, I'm in control of the situation, right? You're going to have a hell of a time getting at me, right? But if I'm in a less than ideal or an overwhelm, emotional, driven, whatever situation, right? Where I'm in the inferior position, right? Surprise attack, whatever, okay? That Kamae could look, right? Could all kinds of different ways because it's not the ideal, right? There's lots of ways to translate these things as we go. What I'm looking at is where does the emotional kind of stuff fit in, right? But it's not just overwhelm or whatever. It could be, right? Pissed off and you're taking the fight to them. So if I'm in a superior position, the Dragon Realm then is, I do minimum necessary to control this situation because I'm in the top position, right? I don't need as much, okay? The Tiger Realm, right? Because of his level of evil, his whatever it is, right? My level of pissed off, right? Taking the fight to him and I will rip shit apart, okay? So one type of training looks like the ideal when people watch Hatsumi Sensei or the master teachers and whatnot. In more often than not, what you're seeing is dragon level training, right? This right side, you're in an ideal position, you've got control, you're calm and relaxed, all these key words that everybody knows, right? But every once in a while you train with somebody who is a demon, like Suzuki Sensei, or sometimes Seno Sensei, Oguri Sensei before he passed. Oh my God. Definitely tiger level kind of guys, right? They'll laugh right in your face while creating a degree of pain you've probably never felt before, right? And while your body is screaming in pain, they're looking right at you, just going, "That's terrible, isn't it?" And laughing, right? So these are two completely different aspects to training, right? And a lot of folks don't even want to know that this exists, okay? Because it fucking hurts. It's too much work. Okay? Not that this isn't a lot of work, because what's it take to be in a superior position? What does it take to have that level of calm and relaxed response when bad shit is going on all around you, right? Okay. And again, lots of ways to translate things. Knocking down the tiger here. The tiger is the euphemism for the level of evil and shit that the bad guy's bringing in your direction, right? In that case, right, we're not the tiger, right? How do I break this guy when he's got all the advantages and all that kind of stuff, right? So you got to put a lot of these things together and understand the crux, the kaname, right? Slipping into that opening so you can go right to his weakest point, which is the center of his strength. Because if you break it, it's like knocking down a house of cards. Okay. So, but anyway, cool little things hidden in here. All right. So let's see what I do. I demonstrated the Seigan no Kamae, quick left and right, ideal, reflexive, emotional, got all that stuff. Okay. So let's bring it back to these four base emotions, because you'll often hear a lot of us talking about these modes of operating, right? Now, from a dragon perspective, you could choose one if you understand them from a tactical, strategic, logical perspective. You can choose them because what you're going to do is you're going to match them up to the problem or to this. Like when I was a cop, didn't matter if I felt anxious or overwhelmed. Didn't matter what kind of fear was going on behind that uniform or plain clothes or whatever. Didn't matter if I wanted to be there or not. My job said, I will be here and I will present an image that is unthreatened, in charge, because I represent authority. I represent the law. So nobody gets to see me sweat, right? They can see me bleed, but they don't get to see the effect of the bleeding. Okay. So my job is to rush in. My job is to stand firm. My job, right? So there's rules and things that could be in place. No matter what kind of fighter we imagine ourselves to be, if we're afraid of losing our job and the place where we work uh, has morality clauses or has things where it's a zero tolerance policy, and even though you're protecting other people and you exhibit violence and now you've scared the shit out of your manager or the director of that department or whatever, they can decide they're going to pull that and use it to help you out of the company, because even though you protected people, now they're afraid because that pierces their veil of, since I'm a manager, leader, executive, or whatever, I'm in control and I'm in charge. And now, right, nature steps in, okay? Because the rule of nature is the strong one gets to be in charge. The strongest one gets to be in charge, okay? Which is why we stop at red lights, which is why we, follow certain rules and whatnot, because the powers that be can reach into our fucking wallet, right? Remove us from our family and put us behind bars and those kind of things. So we make value judgments, but either way, right? So, but if we were left to raw kind of things, right? How could these things show up? So as a mode of operation from the dragon side, right? We're choosing the mode of operation that matches his fight style, that matches his strengths, that matches how I need to operate to get into that crux, right? Into that weak point, right? So for in some instances, I need to, you know, flank it or whatever, right? In other instances, I can charge straight in. In other instances, freaking wait for him to come to me so that rip his face off and call it a day, right? But what I'm looking at today is the emotional driver. So Dragon Realm is more of a logical, rational. Why am I choosing this one, right? I'm not. I'm more dispassionate, right? There's this thing in Gyokoryu, right? This Kuji that goes before things, right? Where you're just removing yourself from the situation, and that's fine if that's where you are, or if that's where you can flip a switch and put yourself there. Otherwise, you're like emotionally, right? Okay. There's lots of other conditions that feed into these, right? Like if I'm on my own, whatever happens based on the natural conditions of the moment, because I don't have a whole lot of extra influencers on me. But if my wife or my 4-year-old grandson is with me, bet your ass I'm going to have way different emotional influencers going on, because there's going to be stressors I can't lose. There's going to be stressors I can't trip over them. All kinds of things going on, right? So uh, the emotional modes from the tiger perspective is, instead of strategically choosing a mode of operation, here we recognize where we already are. And if we've trained in all of these modes, we've trained our techniques in all these modes, then we understand what we need to be able to do. Okay. This goes back to one of the definitions of kamai. Okay. Kamai is not a stance. Kamai is not dachi. Okay. It's not dachi. Okay. They're named for different parts of the body, completely different parts of the body, how they're looked at, how they're approached, and all that, right? But kamai, one of the everyday translations for a Japanese person for the word kamai is being aware of your condition. So how are you feeling, right? What's going on? Not how you're trying to present yourself, right? And what BS you're putting out so that everybody buys that you're just the calm, cool, collected guy, right? I don't mean that you have to wear your emotions out on your sleeve, but you do need to understand what kind of emotions are going on, because they actually influence the way the body's able to move, right? I keep bumping back and forth to these things. And again, we're gonna cover those things during the Friday virtual class. So if you make it, great. If not, hopefully this will serve you, right? So, but what are these emotional modes when we're under the influence, right, of these emotions, right? So we tend to give them a code. We use an old Japanese coding system. Sometimes it was used for counting. Sometimes it goes all the way back into China, where it looks at we're not listing earth, water, literal fire, right? It's the gokui, it's the essential nature of those things. And then that becomes a way to classify things so we can learn things much, much faster. Okay. Which is why in the Godai, right, earth is um, is chi, right? Not dole. Okay. Dole is earth, the ground. Okay. Chi is an earth-like nature, solid, like rocks, like mountains, that kind of thing, right? Sui, water, is the essential nature of water. Clear, uh, undulating, adaptive, flowing, those kind of things, right? It's not mizu, right? You don't go to Japan, go to a restaurant and order a glass of sui, right? I'd like sui, right? Sui. Sui on this guy. Right? Let's see. Okay? Mizu. Mizu. You want water? Mizu. Right? It's water. It's the actual water that goes in the glass. Look, Mizu. Right? So again, they're codes. Okay. So when we discuss these modes, right? Earth mode, right, has the qualities of holding, commanding, strength through position, leverage, those kind of things, right? So holding, strength, right? Authority, those kind of things, right? Water, again, a lot of people are like, they don't do it this way in Japan. I don't care. Okay. See the amount of, I don't care. Okay. I use things that help students get from point A to point Z as quickly as possible, because in the realm of self-defense and survival, you don't have decades to master this shit. You don't. The nature of violence, and again, right? The nature of violence, right? From our perspective is it's random. You never know when it's going to happen, what shape it's going to take, when it's going to show up, whatever. You don't know, right? So you need to freaking get there as quickly as possible. Here's the irony though, right? From the perspective of the attacker, it's hardly ever random. Nobody just snaps. They may just go into motion and surprise everybody because they finally acted out. But for a long time, they've been insinuating, they've been thinking about shit, they've been secretly planning, right? That the moment that they pull the pin, or they pull the trigger, and they go into action, they've already got their shit worked out. Okay. Very, very rarely from the attacker's side is it random. Very rarely. Okay. It just doesn't work that way, right? But from our perspective, especially in the modern civilized world, it's almost always random from our perspective. So we have to know that it can happen anytime, it can take any shape, whatever, and then train based on time, environment, the shape, the type of attack, the number of attackers, size differential between me and them, right? This is not conventional martial arts where we're gonna get teamed up, rank for rank, size for size, age for age. I mean, shit, I'm twice as old as, well, almost twice as old as the senior division in most martial arts organizations that are involved in tournaments. That's 32 to 35. I just crested 61. Holy shit, right? So they get handicap points and all that. But from the water realm, right, now we have the nature of responding, defensive, pulling away, creating time and space, those kind of things, right? So responsive, adaptive, defensive. Water realm, I'm creating time and space. So I have time to see things come. I have a greater field of vision, observation wise, to be able to find the best avenues for entering in, to find the best time. Meanwhile, he's got to struggle more to get me because I put more distance, I put more barricades, those kind of things between he and I, right? We have to get past the step by step of what the model looks like and understand what it is that we're doing with things, right? One of the best things that some of my teachers have ever done was be at a certain kami and they'll walk over and go, why is that hand, right? Why is that arm right there at that level in that shape? And the correct answer was not, because that's the way we do it. That's the way it's in this lineage. That's how you taught me, sensei. Because if you had the wrong answer, they would tell you to stop doing it. Well, what am I supposed to do? The thing that serves you because you know why you're doing it. If I stick this thing out here and I don't know its purpose and how it's like the tension and relaxation kind of dynamic that's supposed to be going on, he'll just freaking attack my arm. He'll just sweep my leg, right? Some of you may have heard this story before, so I apologize, but I'm catching everybody else up. I was in Japan one time. I was training in Ninjutsu Sensei's dojo, and I was working with another black belt. When I go to Japan, I'm not in teaching mode, right? Don't ask me a damn thing because I'm trying to figure things out at my level. I don't drop $4,000 in change to go to Japan for 2 weeks, spend more money on training than I do on hotel and all kinds of other stuff to be wasting my time being the teacher, right? However, I was working with this guy and he's a black belt. I don't know what level, I don't care, right? But we're working, and I just kind of tossed something out. I said, look, I'm not here to teach. I'm not here to, I don't know what your level is, whatever, okay? But every time you go back at your angle, right? Because naname has a very specific angle to it, but it's not 30 degrees, it's not 45 degrees. It's based on your alignment with them, okay? But every time you go back into that, come on, I just want to kick you in the crotch. And the reason for that was because, one, he was too close, so his distance was wrong. His mai was wrong, right? His naname, his angle was wrong because he was bringing targets to bear. I didn't explain all this stuff. I just said, every time you move in that position, I'm going to kick you in the crotch. And he goes, I don't have to worry about that. That's not in this kata. I said, oh, I apologize. I thought we always had to worry about getting kicked in the crotch. No worries. Went back to it. Next time teacher demonstrated something, I had to go for another part, or go to get back with my partner to train. I found another partner. Okay, so we need to understand what's going on. Anyway, fire, right? Fire, not snap, crackle, pop, make your s'mores, toast your marshmallows, whatever. I mean, you can toast your marshmallows on your own time, but anyway, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Anyway, right, so, but fire, right, the essential nature of this is aggressive. I don't necessarily mean destructive, right? What I mean is committed, direct, overwhelming, right? So where water is creating space and time, right, making it difficult for him to get at me, in fire, I'm stealing space and time. I'm getting in there and preempting things. So now he doesn't have the space and the time to work to do his techniques. So there's certain fight styles, and all these are also codes. I walk people around. All these are codes for fights. Okay, this guy fights a very specific way. Okay, this guy a very specific way. This guy fights a very specific way. Right. So have we worked? And that would be for another class. Have we worked our techniques based on somebody who's trying to get a hold of you and just pound the shit out of you? Right. Have we worked our techniques on somebody who is this big haul off kind of guy who's throwing everything he's got in one shot, right? Or have we worked our techniques against this guy who's just jab, jab, right craw? Well, no, sensei, because the technique is against Atsuki. Really? How many people in 21st century America, Britain, Australia, Macau, whatever, do you know that fucking punches like that? Right? It's a great place to start, and there's lots that you can learn from that, but ... Okay? So fire, again, aggressive, committed, that kind of thing, right? Aggressive, direct. You're not wasting time. You preempt it. You get your ass in there, right? Take advantage of it, okay? And from an emotional standpoint, we could actually start in one of these things, right? We could be overwhelmed, realize the guy doesn't fight very well, or he keeps making stupid mistakes, or he's drunk or whatever. Either go into a controlling mode or just shit, right? And go in there. Just like, you know, you could have a humdrum day, you're kind of hanging out with friends. The place that you're going wasn't, you know, your first choice, but you want to hang out with your friends. So you're kind of neutral, emotional, whatever. And then next thing you know, you get in there and you realize, oh shit, this is pretty fun, right? Next thing you know, you're in a different mode, right? So ego likes to believe that we're the same way all the time, but we're not, right? Ego's stupid, right? So fire, wind, right? What about void, sensei? Void's the ability to think and communicate and choose the one that you're supposed to be in or recognize the one that you're already in. So wind has the qualities of evasiveness, flanking, tricky and unpredictable movement, that kind of stuff, right? So I'll just shortcut this. Tricky, unpredictable, right? Flanking, right? Evasive, avoiding, right? All that kind of stuff, okay? So, excuse me. So, you know what? I'm going to toss one more thing in there that I just thought of, just to make sure everybody has it, right? In the very beginning, at the very beginning of the class, right? I said that one of the problems is that training tends to focus heavily on the physical step by step. And even when people are sparring, right? They're thinking about what move, what, you know, if he does that thing again, I'm going to do whatever, instead of focusing on like the crux of things, the energy, right? What kind of fighter is this guy and what's the best strategical option, right? I've got a bunch of students right now going through a program I call the realm of the tactical warrior. And this is like the battlefield tactician, right? Not just throwing a bunch of freaking bodies onto the field, right? And this is where ninjutsu gets separated from bujutsu, right? We're not just throwing a shit ton of against bodies, right? I mean, it's one way of it, but you're really kind of playing the lottery because the winner is the one who had less guys taken out and has more resources left over, right? Ninjutsu is very different, right? So what I want to do is do my research, right? How do these people attack, right? I want to read Sun Tzu's Art of War and understand how to bottleneck people, how to surround them but still leave them with an out. I want to, all these strategies, right? Because that's the way you control the bubble. That's the way you control the situation. That's the way you control their perceptions and what they think is possible, right? You always sow disorder. You give them false information about your resources. This is not just about a general with a big army and supply lines and all that. You have supply lines, right? Your muscles are going to be using glycogen and then restoring glycogen. You've got spikes and troughs in that kind of thing, right? Mental faculties, you've got time, distance, size, or not, whatever, right? So how are you going to use that? Okay. So here's that paradigm that I talked about where most people are focusing on the what and how, but not the why. Okay. And again, specific to emotions. Okay. So the way that the average human being learns best and fastest, right, is by doing, and then they think about it, right, to understand it, right, and then they have a feeling about it. And I don't mean that they're happy, elated, whatever. What I mean is there's an attraction, aversion or repulsion, or just kind of a meh, right, whatever, okay? So action, right? We think about it, strategic, and then feel. So for most people, you're learning kata, waza, skills, whatever, right? You learn a bit about the strategy, here's what you're doing or whatever, and then is this something I like, don't like, whatever, right? People always talk about their preferences. What I do, man, when I get in there is I always start this way and oh, great. Stop advertising that shit because now that I've heard how you start things, guess what you're not going to be able to do, or guess what I'm going to be on the lookout for, right? So that shit only works against somebody that has never fought you before, or they fight the same way and they're paying more attention to their shit than they are you. You're paying attention to the opposite person. Right? Again, Sun Tzu. If I know neither the enemy or myself, can't win. If I only know one, but not the other, in whichever direction, for every win, I'm going to suffer a loss only by knowing both. Right? Can I be unbeatable? Okay. But this is the normal paradigm. And it makes sense because we learn this stuff faster. Right? This is the way we learn faster. We think about it and understand how it works, and we end up having kind of a, oh, I like that, whatever, okay? But as human beings, as systems, we work exactly the opposite, right? Something happens, we have an emotional response to that thing, then based on what we think we know about the situation and how to handle it, then we go into action. So the learning paradigm goes in one direction. The response, this is how human beings make decisions. I don't care if you're buying a new car, you're buying the new Marvel action figure. I don't give a shit what it is, right? But this is how, right, we live. Even people that think that they're just coldly emotional, I always make emotional, rational decisions. No, you don't. Right? Science has proven this again and again and again, right? Unless you are an absolute sociopath that you have no emotions whatsoever, right? Everything is just things, right? Including human beings, right? You want something or you want to avoid something, right? You've already had this impetus, even if it was subconscious. And then the logical thing that we think we're doing, and this is how we lead with things, no, logic is justifying the feeling. 99.2% of the time, logic is justifying. Why 0.2? Because some people know how the system works and they catch themselves and go back and reapply logic regardless of the feel. Okay? But sometimes, right, there is no getting out of that until you deal with it and change the paradigm to where you feel different. Okay? So anyway, just a place to go. We're going to go into this much more in depth this Friday's class. And actually, after that, next Monday, I go on vacation. My wife and I got ourselves a cruise to the Eastern Caribbean as a Christmas present for each other, but we don't leave until Monday. So there will not be, unless my guy James plugs in kind of some placeholders and it just kind of runs automatically from the vault. We'll just pull out some old episodes or whatever, because I know how human beings are. Also, when they get out of habit with doing things, sometimes then everything falls apart and then they don't show back up for lessons later on. But I'll be out for 2 weeks. So while there will be in my Ninpo Masterclass program, you're in the Platinum Inner Circle program, you're in the Shinobi Kai program, those kind of things, right, where you rely on virtual classes Tuesdays, Fridays. If you're in the Realm of the Tactical Warrior program and you get that virtual masterclass Q&A on Mondays, all those things will still be going on. Staff will be running those normally, but the Friday classes, if you're in the Nimbo Masterclass program, and the Tuesday classes, because they get both, it'll be whatever Shidoshi Whistler is teaching on that particular class. And I think he's focusing on basics this time around, because basics are often shite. And anyway, the more unique we think we are as human beings, the more on top of whatever it is we think we are or whatever, actually, I found that the more average we actually end up being. Okay, so anyway, I know I just scribbled all over everything and whatnot. You'll have the recording that you can get back to, but that's what I have. Okay, so if you have any questions, comments, again, I can't typically interact while I'm teaching with this because I throw it, and we're almost 5 minutes over. So actually, right on time because I started about 4 minutes late. I apologize. Anyway, so if you have any questions, you can always write those things in. If you're looking for additional training, you can go to onlineninjaacademy.com, and we've got a bunch of these other programs and whatnot. Get on the mailing list, if nothing else, so you get updates and whatnot. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's it. Hopefully this served you. In the comments, right? If you're on Facebook, whichever page, right? Because this simulcast on my Facebook page, it simulcast on the Online Ninja Academy or Online Ninjutsu training Facebook page, and then it's on our YouTube and whatnot. So post something in the comments about what your biggest aha moment was, whether it was, I didn't know that that's how the whole koto you kind of thing could be retranslated. You caught something, you picked up on something or whatever. And even if you had a problem with it, right? Ask a respectful question and you'll get a respectful answer, right? Be one of these flaming retards that don't know how to do anything and hide behind anonymity online. One, you're not getting an answer, and two, I'm just going to freaking delete things and then block it out, and then you can go harass somebody else. All right, I don't play those games. All right, but anyway, if this was helpful, let me know, and if you have any topic requests or things that you'd like for me to touch on in future classes, or there's something I covered before you want me to come at it from a different angle or go deeper into it or whatever, just let me know. All right, that's it. Otherwise, I will talk to everybody again either your next class or next week on Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday.